So now we are hearing from Narada his backstory. Sages who were walking through his village, and because of that, he got to serve them. And being with them constantly, he was listening to a lot of teachings and stories of Krishna. He says, I attained purity of mind, and thereby I understood the creed of devotion. And then he says, by this process, I developed an attraction for the Supreme Being. And when I developed an affinity for Him, my mind got firmly established in the Lord of Supreme Glory. And through this process, my mind perceived the whole of this gross and subtle world as simply a superimposition through Maya. So he says, Tasmin tada labdar ucher mahamune priyashravasya akhilata matirmama yaya aham etat sadasat swamayaya pashye mayi brahmani kalpitam pare. So first he describes the process of how the realization happened. So he says how the realization happened not through any other effort except simply serving and being in the assembly of the holy sages. So this is why Satsang is very powerful, and it's constantly glorified in Bhagavatam and in many other places, because when one is in the holy assembly, when one is in Satsang, when we are gathered together, then we are naturally drawn to the highest truth. And in fact, we may presume that satsang leads us to grace, but actually it is grace that leads us to satsang. So this has been mentioned by many, that it's only because of grace that we even come to satsang, and the very pull towards satsang is itself a symptom of grace. And to listen to Bhagavatam, or to sit together in silence, or to discuss these matters, Krishna says in the Gita too, that those who are devoted to me sit and discuss among themselves and get great joy abiding in the truth and being together. So this process of satsang is what brings the realization most effortlessly. Everything else comes out of this, because only when one gets contact with a great sage or the teachings of a great sage, that marks the true beginning of our realization of the false nature of individuality, of the false nature of ego, and the truth of the all-pervading divine energy. So that's why Narada first says this all happened because of satsang. And he was a child, and he was simply listening and serving these great beings, and they were just discussing these matters. And because of such sublime discussions happening, the mind got, he says, automatically purified. And when the mind was purified, then naturally, he says, I was able to firmly be established in the Lord of Supreme Glory. And also, not only that, he says, Yaya aham etat sadasat swamayaya pashye. So I saw everything as simply the Maya, which is the divine energy of the Supreme Lord. Sadasat swamayaya means sad asat, that is that which is, one can say, gross and subtle, or cause and effect. Anything that appears, etat, all this is, so essentially he says, this which appears as what is, the entire universe, which appears with so many infinite forms, both that which can be perceived by the senses, such as seen and heard and smelled and so on, and that which can simply be thought of or felt or known abstractly, various concepts. So many concepts are also perceived, such as, for instance, we say a country is only a concept. We cannot see or touch or feel a country. Or emotions similarly. So there are so many such concepts that are there, so many emotions that are there, and so many objects of perception that are there. Everything, he says, Aisa Pashe Mai Brahmani Kalpitam Pare. So they were all perceived by me as simply appearance in this supreme truth. Brahman, Brahmani means in Brahman, Pare, which is the eternal truth. So the eternal, transcendent, supreme truth, which is pure beingness, existence, and that existence, which is Brahman, cannot be captured with any word. Even the word Brahman simply means that which is infinite, and even the word infinite, as we can see, is only a negative word, that which is not finite. That's all it is. There is no positive description one can give to the essential nature of the universe, that in which everything appears, the existence or the presence in which everything appears. That's why it's said both to be void and full, empty and full. It is both all pervading and within everyone. It is the only truth that there is, and therefore in that simple existence, which is Brahman, he says Kalpitam, that means everything else simply appears. They are, that's why called Maya. He says, in fact, Swamayaya Kalpitam Pare. By the Maya, which is the illusory energy. Illusory energy means that which is constantly changing. So we cannot call it as real or unreal. And that is true of any appearance. Whatever appears in this universe is both real and unreal at the same time. That's why another expression for Maya is, it's called Anirvachaniya, that is that which cannot be pinpointed as true or not true, because it seems to be real, but it also is constantly changing, and in constant change it is impermanent, and therefore there is nothing there, because before we can touch it, it changes already. Any object, if we really look closely, it's only an appearance, and the appearance is always changing. That is why it is said that the water in a river, for example, is flowing constantly. So we think there is a river, but in reality there is no river, because it's just flowing water. And what we see is the constant flow of water. And that is why it is said that we cannot even put our feet in the same river twice. And matter of fact, we cannot even do it once, because the river we see and the river we put our feet in are already different. It's always changing. So in this way, everything is changing. There is always movement. Therefore, it's unreal, and yet it's real also, because it has a provisional reality which one has to deal with. We cannot simply say it's unreal and escape from it either. So there is this both real and unreal nature, And that's also another meaning of Sad Asat. So it's this nature of this world, which is both real and unreal, is all appearing through the Maya, and that Maya is the energy that is present in existence in the Supreme Being, which is all there is. So that's what Narada realizes, and he says all this realization happened simply because of the grace of Satsang.